Direct continuation of last week's Black Knight episode.
Hi, I'm Dr. Elise Lowing. Oh, good gracious, you guys are still on the floor? Here, let me fix you up.
Whoa!
Now, you've been a little harsh on Sonic's Secret Rings there. That happens to be one of my favorite games. Eraser Jim was doing much more than just sitting on his throne. He was tearing up the Arabian Night stories.
Did someone turn our hospital room into a high tea restaurant or something? Come along, ladies. Take the kids. Have a nice chat with a nice unconscious gentleman.
Eraser Jin. He's kinda like Ganondorf in that most of his actions are off-screen. It works for Zelda, where it's all about legends and atmospheres and fairy tale-like world building, but in Sonic I need something more on hands. I'm not experiencing Eraser Jin's power.
But we see the consequences, don't we? Also, Eraser Jin has a much stronger motivation build up as a villain at this point. We know he is evil from the get-go, and as we travel the Arabian Nights world as Sonic, we learn more about him, and what troubles he's caused, and his reasons behind it all, while Merlina, being evil, just comes out of nowhere. So Sonic storming Eraser Jin's castle has a much bigger emotional punch for me than Sonic going to confront Merlina.
Right, interesting point. There's a huge difference between Black Knight and Secret Rings story, where Secret Rings has a straight and solid emotional build-up. Eraser Jin is the bad guy, we travel the lands observing his deeds and then go off to punch him for once and for all. Their Black Knights prefer to rely on big plot twists. Bam! Off the villain. Bam! Suddenly a dragon kidnapped the family. Bam! It was Amy's secret test of character. Bam! Merlina was the bad guy. So the two stories work on different energies. What do you prefer? Solid and well-built, but predictable? Or bam, boom, whoa, look at that!
Yeah, that's not my preferred kind of story. It's just too random for me. However, I do have to give Black Knight some credit. At least Merlina's betrayal is better worked into the narrative than Eggman's betrayal in Lost World. Still, as much as you disliked that, Black Knight does the same to me. Maybe not on a severe level, but I still get that violent jolt. Merlina has too little screen time before her betrayal to have an impact. And when she does have screen time, she's mostly giving exposition or reciting poetry.
Well, I've seen much worse video game poetry. Right, anyway, I suppose it's because they were relying on their memories of Elise.
Huh?
Princess Elise and Shira to do a lot of the legwork of our assumptions about Merlina. Oh, it's another one of those Sonic characters again.
It's kind of a bad idea to depend on the audience to be familiar with two other games. Plus, I hate it when stories just introduce ideas to either shatter other people's expectations or purely for the sake of a shock factor. But sure, I can see your point.
It's a very risky and weird decision they made. Yes, I agree with you, it wasn't a very smart idea. Though they did advertise the game as part of their storybook series on the cover, so they do invite people to compare Merlina with Shara. And nevertheless, it kinda worked for me, so there's some merit to it. It depends on how you're consuming the story, as a true narrative or as an emotional roller coaster. I admit it took me a while to see Black Knight's potential myself. Heck, I was very unimpressed when it came out and mocked the premise with my occasional partner Alex back then. That's the thing with Black Knight, it's only the execution, the soul that's so fantastic. The overall theme, the outer shell is weird. It really feels like you have a team of really passionate developers, bunch of guys who are ready to make a really kick-ass Sonic game and then are suddenly being banned from the main series and forced into an appealing weird experiment. Storybooks, princesses, knights, it's a hard pill to swallow. Again, it took me a while to appreciate Black Knight and Secret Rings for what they were. But heck, it's the same with Sonic Colors. Compare my parody I made close after its release with my current views on the game, very few of my current strong opinions are demonstrated. Right around Unleashed, the Sonic series was so unstable and all over the place that my brain needed a lot of time to understand what it was seeing. So pretty much all Wii games got a superficial, this is boring and weird opinion until my brain caught up. All that said, it's the burning soul that appeals to me, not the strong narrative. Merlina is great as a source of opposing energy to Sonic, but not properly explored as a genuine character by her own right.
I feel more detached from her character than I would with either Shara or even Elise. At least with those two, they have more screen time and we see their relationship with Sonic develop more. Merlina, on the other hand, doesn't have that. She is barely with the group for most of the story, so I get a sense of detachment, making her betrayal just confusing rather than giving a genuine emotional impact. That said, there's another point I want to bring up, because it's probably my biggest issue with Sonic and the Black Knight. Okay, so it's supposed to be based on the story of King Arthur, right? Now, we all know King Arthur is the central character in the Arthurian legends, and is the hero. In this game, however, he is suddenly made the villain by some unknown reason, and now we have to kill him. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, to Black Knight's defense, it never says it's a direct adaptation of the King Arthur legends, more that Sonic just happens to be in that story. More an interactive playground rather than a chronological story. And again, Black Knight deliberately wants to twist your expectations around. The supposed hero is evil. Nice victim girl Merlina is evil.
I get the feeling she's supposed to be based on Vivian and Morgan Le Fay, two sorceresses in the story who are supposed to be evil. Now, I have nothing wrong with that, but her betrayal just feels very random, as we are given little warning about it coming. And unless you know the Arthurian legends, you wouldn't be able to make that connection, especially since Vivian is one of the lesser known characters.
Well, me being someone not familiar with the King Arthur legends at all beyond general pop culture knowledge, I think the story works fine as just Sonic in a generic story about knights kind of idea. Every character works as a functional character archetype, and in-depth knowledge of the legend might add a few in-jokes and extra details, but isn't too vital to understand the gist of the story.
Okay, fair enough. And I can kind of agree with that statement. There are some things in the Arthurian legends that wouldn't really work in a Sonic-like story. So a basic Sonic in a well-known medieval story is the best direction for something like this. Something like Disney's Sword in the Stone. Appropriate for many ages, but also paying some homage to the original King Arthur stories. However, just how Black Knight's story is set up and executed is why it doesn't completely work for me. It has the right tone, I will say that, but the fact that they make King Arthur the villain and you have to kill him doesn't really make it true to the original stories. Another example of it not being true to the original stories would be Gawain almost killing himself after Sonic defeats him. That's the way of the samurai, not the way of the knight. In the real stories, if a knight was beaten in combat, if their opponent didn't kill them, then they would have to do the victor a favor. So instead of a dramatic, "Only death can remove this stain upon my honor" scene, they could have had a, "How humiliating, I lost to a mere apprentice. Still, I must follow the code of chivalry, so I will do what you request."
Cool, quicker access to a playable Knuckles. But yeah, some guy in the comments already made a compelling argument that a Japanese warrior roaming the lands, a Ronin I think, would thematically make more sense for Sonic. Not to mention, samurai and ninja stuff is cooler than knights. Shame. For that matter, I'm surprised how little Japanese culture there is in Sonic in general. The Japanese really consider him to be an American hero and keep their culture out of it.
Now, all that said, the thing I find most insulting about all of this is how Sonic is such a show-off in this game. You guys brought this up in your second Dissected. He just grabs a sword and suddenly knows how to use it without years of training like the other knights. Take Lancelot, for example. He's the first boss that we fight, and Caliburn tells you that he is the strongest of all the knights. Yet we go in, and we hit him a few times with our sword, and we win the fight in less than 10 seconds. Yeah.
It's implied Shadow overestimates him, and he returns later as a proper boss.
But it is disappointing on how it was just a bonus fight and not the real thing.
Well, video game difficulty progression stuff. Still, you have a point. Though my take on it is the same as with Arthur. Sonic's okay, but the writers should have given the others more opportunity to snap back at him. The writers are a little too in love with making Sonic perfect, which makes his story fall into Gary Stu territory.
Oh, and as a cherry on a sundae, Sonic gives them lectures on how they can be better knights. Like the scene after they escape the castle. As they are coming to realize what has just happened, Sonic comes in and lectures them for giving up and doing nothing. Hello, Sonic. In case you haven't noticed, you took their swords! And they need those swords to put up the barrier! So right now they can't do anything! If anything, it should be Sonic who is learning the ways of knighthood, not the other way around.
Well, you're supposed to be wrapped up in the emotional energy and symbolism of the Knight of the Wind, inspiring hope in those who lost their way.
To me, that's Sonic basically saying, "How dare you stand around in shock as you just found out your king was an illusion and your home was blown up by a deranged witch instead of rushing into trouble like me, you pathetic losers!" Gee, Sonic, just when I thought you were a big jerk in this game already, you show me you can just keep going and get worse.
He's Knight of the Wind, constantly pushing everyone forward to do the right thing. But yes, a more encouraging, "Come on guys, let's do this" tone would have been nicer. Character balance would have fixed that. His attitude is at least done in service of heroism, pushing the game to start saving the day, which is why I find this more acceptable than Sonic from Colors On, where his asshole behavior doesn't inspire anything and is just for the sake of being an ass.
The only one who lectures Sonic constantly is Caliburn, although I still find it weird that they make Caliburn a talking sword. That kind of borders on Dora the Explorer when you think about it.
I'm not familiar with Arthurian legends, but I did read a parody series of Discworld which also had a talking sword in it. So if they appear in parodies, I'm gonna assume it's a recurring element in sword and sorcery fantasy stories.
Anyway, Sonic doesn't even listen to him most of the time, and ends up doing the right thing anyway. Caliburn said he was going to train Sonic to be a knight, but most of the time he and Sonic are just insulting each other. If anything, Caliburn is just there so Sonic can have an argument with something. So even when Caliburn was broken at the climax, I didn't feel much of an emotional impact because throughout the game he and Sonic are mostly arguing.
Well, it's a manly kind of relationship. Ego-driven, neither wants to admit they need each other and they keep bickering, but by the end of the adventure they behave like one and occasionally give each other small compliments. Nothing big, just small gestures, but you know, that's manly. No big speeches or hugs, just doing manly things together without bickering. That's all the bonding they need. Not that I know much.
Plus, look at the scenes to where Caliburn is broken compared to Shara sacrificing herself to save Sonic's life. When Caliburn is broken, Sonic only takes a second or two to be shocked about it, and then foolishly rushes in only to get beaten up by Merlina. Now compare that to Shara's death. Look at Sonic. He's very shocked and even scared, especially since that attack was meant for him. He is also begging for Shara not to die and sounds upset. And when he's powered up with the rings, he's still asking Shara for her help. To me, that shows that he and Shara had a genuine bond, and seeing a friend dying in his arms was very traumatic for him. And now he has another reason to defeat Eraser, making his boss fight more satisfying. But with Caliburn, he's just angry that Merlina broke his sword.
Good point, although I have to defend Black Knight here by saying Sonic and Caliburn had a whole different relation with each other than Sonic and Shara. Shara's more a tragic sister-lover that you want to protect, while Sonic and his sword are more bros, I guess. So the more manly, "You broke my toy, I'll punch you" response works with this kind of emotional energy. A tragic death doesn't quite work with Black Knight's more macho attitude. That said, it is strange that they make Caliburn's death a direct parallel to Shara. The comparison is indeed unfavorable to Black Knight.
However, what deeply offends me is that, at the very end, the story suddenly introduces the idea of Sonic being the true King Arthur. How does that even work? Sonic isn't even from that world. How can he be the true King Arthur? That's just random, crazy, and utterly ridiculous. I'm sorry for being harsh, but that's really pushing it, especially since Sonic was made out to be such a flawless character in this game from start to finish. I liked Sonic in Secret Rings, I can tolerate him in Next Gen, but in this game, I can't stand him! The only time I like him in this game is when Amy's about to beat the snot out of him at the end. Sorry, I just had to get that out of my system.
I suppose making Sonic into the Grand King Arthur is a bit much. Then again, it's Sonic telling the story, so of course he has to make himself to be the big Gary Stu almighty super god-like hero that he is.
Also, the ending does explain that the sword chose him, except Merlina made him pick up the sword. Well, Sonic earned the right to be chosen as Arthur by impressing the sword, so it makes sense. Though I admit it's a bad ending, especially since Sonic assumingly immediately bails out and runs off, so he's pretty worthless as a king, one that refuses to take responsibility and just wants to roam the lands. It's weird, the game is so metal-inspired, and then they forget the biggest and most important part about heavy metal heroes. They don't want to be worshipped or claim the throne. A good metal hero just kicks ass and then disappears in the shadows again, which sums up Sonic to a T. So him becoming a king is just too much, yeah. Though, as Luke said, it's Sonic telling the story, so from that perspective it makes sense. But taking away the "it was all a dream" ending, if I was the writer of the story, I'd probably have Tails end up being King Arthur. Fits more with the humble working man becomes king kind of theme we often see in fairy tales.
I personally don't have many strong feelings about the gameplay, but I did see a few comments from other people about it, so let's talk about those. One that really caught my attention was that Secret Rings felt like it was a fast-paced game, whereas Black Knight felt abrupt as you had to stop and do combat with enemies. Now pacing, more than in any other Sonic game, is really important in the storybook games as they're on rails and therefore you don't need slower moments to look around or deal with complicated level structures like in the main games. You're constantly running toward the goal, so more than ever, you just want to keep on going. The camera is fixed on Sonic's back and you never need to look around, so you can entirely focus on the dangers on the road, which is how it should be. Everything about the game seems designed to emphasize speed and racing toward the goal.
Unless the missions want you to turn around and go back, then it becomes a nightmare.
In Black Knight, while having a fun combat system, slows the pacing down as Sonic has to stop and do attacks. There are times when the wind-up for a sword slash is slow.
Black Knight has a more stop-go rhythm to it. In regular Sonic games, I hate the space-breaking combat like Heroes or X6, but since sword fighting is so integrated in Black Knight, it feels more like a whole to me. We're not just a fragile speedster, but a bulky warrior smashing through hordes of enemies. And not to mention there's one spin attack that keeps the running pace going. In fact, I practically always use this attack unless I'm low on health. With this attack you can keep going. But right, for the big epic moves or when you're in trouble, you have to use the super attacks that have a more pounding rhythm.
Super attacks? You mean the soul surges. The windup of these attacks actually look pretty sluggish, as you have to wait until the cursor turns white before you can strike if you want to keep your soul gauge full. Whereas in Secret Rings, you just need to collect pearls to keep your soul gauge full. And while Time Break can make the gameplay sluggish, Sonic is still moving forward. It's comparable to a run or walk button, a decision you make when you need to concentrate on a challenge rather than speeding forward. It fits more organically with the core gameplay. Instead of strange combat rituals, you just have to concentrate on what's happening with the platforms around you and make quick reactions to what's happening. It feels more fast-paced and precise. It has fewer enemies, and they only show up in places where you need to either use them as a bridge to get across gaps, or if you are doing side missions where you have to defeat enemies.
Still, I don't think it's a matter of good or bad. There's two entirely different games going for a different flavor.
As for the stages, I can't say I prefer one or the other. I will say that I feel like Secret Rings has bright, vibrant colors that really make the environment feel both surreal, but realistic at the same time. In Black Knight, the coloring is really toned down and makes me think of a Legend of Zelda game, particularly Twilight Princess, which works perfectly with the setting. I guess I can say that I like both game stages, but my favorite stages would have to be from Secret Rings. They just feel like they could fit in a Sonic game as they have contrasting colors, some light and dark, and the sets are really cool. Some of my favorites are the Sand Oasis, Skeleton Dome, Night Palace, and Levitated Ruins. Oh, when that gargoyle makes that path of light for you, and you can see the scenery from all around you, it's breathtaking. And this is coming from someone who's usually afraid of heights.
Of course you get trouble breathing looking at heights while fearing them. Anyway, dunno, ever since Heroes and Shadows game, these floating rocks in the sky levels bore me. Anyway, Secret Rings has a more varied color scheme indeed. Kinda makes sense. In Secret Rings you're hopping from story to story, while in Black Knight you remain in the same general environment.
Why, yes. Although I am confused as to why they have a dinosaur level. I don't think there are dinosaurs in the Arabian Nights. I've heard of dragons being in the stories, but not dinosaurs. Jeez, Eraser must have really messed up the stories for that to have happened.
Wasn't Arabia the most prominent center of education in the Middle Ages? So educated they snuck a random chapter from a history schoolbook into their fairy tale collection? It's a stupid stretch, but I like the idea.
I also gotta say, I absolutely love the soundtrack. They just get your adrenaline pumping when you're in the levels. They also feel like they could really fit in Arabian Nights stories. Sand Oasis, Levitated Ruins, and Night Palace, fantastic! I also love Eraser's mini-boss music. Makes everyone involved in the fight sound big and important, and Seven Rings in Hand, both versions, have really epic guitars. I also like how at the end they have a sweet, calming song. It makes it feel like you really have come to the end of a long, hard journey. I think it really summed up what Sonic had to go through and him coming to grips with what just happened. Either that, or it's a love song from Eraser to Shara, as it is greatly implied that the two of them had a relationship.
Right. But yeah, also music. Although less variation than Black Knight, almost every song is aggressive rock. Just like the story, Secret Rings has one building sensation, while Black Knight is more of a roller coaster going everywhere. Anyway, gameplay. Besides intense music, Black Knight and Secret Rings have another thing in common. That is, playing the game sucks at the beginning, and the game won't become fun until you leveled up a bit, which sucks. So if you play for the first time, try to hang on for the first hour. Also, I saw some comments saying Secret Rings levels are more fun, where Black Knight stages are bland. Okay, first of all, I hate the word fun in a discussion. It's a discussion killer. I have observations and arguments and connections and a whole complex train of thoughts, and then the counter-argument is no, because it's fun. Oh. Well, great. Guess the discussion is over. Hey, eating ice cream is fun. Let's jam a scoop of strawberry ice cream into every game box. And I'll delete all my Sonic Dissected because Tetris is fun. Therefore, Tetris is a good Sonic game. One of the problems with the word fun is there's two entirely different kinds of fun. I think I mentioned this earlier in a previous Dissected. The childlike freedom fun, the yay, I can do everything I want sandbox fun. Or the be a good boy and do your homework better than the rest of the class, you get a cool sticker on your report. Fun. Sonic and the Secret Rings and Black Knight are a pair, in the exact same way as Sonic Rush and Rush Adventure, and Sonic Unleashed the Wii U PS2 version and the HD versions are. Because I swear, talking about those games always gets the exact same fun bland responses. The two magic words. The first one is challenging and harsh, the second one is easier and more laid back. So spectacle people like me tend to prefer the laid-back ones, calling those fun because, wee, look at me being a badass. While the hardcore Nintendo fan call those bland, because pain is the only acceptable flavor. Then there's the harsher games, which the hardcore Nintendo crowd call fun, and I call... Joking aside, I don't want to make judgments. It's really comparing oranges and apples. It all comes down to the question, why do you play games? To relax and have fun, or to achieve victory and overcome challenges?
No, sir, I don't like
Now, I know I've been heavily criticizing this game, but I don't hate it. In fact, there are a lot of things about it that I actually like, and most of them are things that you guys have already mentioned, such as the atmosphere of it all and the music. I also love the fact that you can play as different characters and not just Sonic after you reach a certain point in the game. I was greatly missing that in the other games. I also love the character designs, and taking out enemies with swords makes me feel epic. And in Black Knight's credit, the gameplay was better than in Secret Rings. Yes, I can say that for myself. Black Knight is one of those Sonic games where there's so much art and beauty on display. On that alone, I can enjoy it. Now, I may sound like a hypocrite given what I've said before, but I just enjoy it as a game I can pick up and play if I'm having a bad day and just want to beat the snot out of enemies, or if it's just a boring day and I want to have some fun. I just wish the story was more polished and didn't just rely on emotional energy to be engaging.
Oh.
Well, you guys are all fixed up. Call me when you talk about Sonic and the Secret Rings, okay? That's one of my favorite games, and I do have a lot to say on it. Well, bye. Oh, and I'll send you the hospital bill.